Alright, here's the video that I promised. I wanted to show you guys really quick my issues with Studio One. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, remember that I use VE Pro to house every one of my instruments. So I only have one VST host, and I have using VE Pro. So here you can see it's called Strings, and I'll bring the VE Pro window over just for a second. Here's the window, and you can see these are all of my instruments. Then ultimately they all go to buses. Here's Dimension, Chamber, and Appassionata from VSL, all sharing one output. And last, and you can see each one of these has a different output based on the section. So now these outputs then come into here in the Studio One. So here is 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, yada 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 yada, all the way through to my 32. And here all I have in this is Justin Bricasti M7, one external effects channel, and every one of these has a send going to that with a different level. Okay, so with that in mind, you can see right now the first issue that I have is track coloring within the mix console. This does not happen, by the way, in the arrange window. It's only in the mixer window. So in the mixer window, you can see I've changed these for you so you could just see some type of organization. So orange, red, a green, and purple, and some type of a mustardish yellow or a brown. So you can see it looks fine right now. So the first thing is, let's go and say, well, I want to change the color of violins. I don't really like the color of this track right here. I want to make this one, because some people like to do bright light orange and then fall down to a dark deep orange, signifying like a high frequency or a high pitch instrument, excuse me, all the way down to, say, basses or whatnot. So some people might have their entire string sections one color, but start really bright and then get really dark. So let's say that I wanted to do something like that. I'm going to change my color scheme. Let's change this instrument. Now watch down here. Watch what happens to my whole mix console. I'm not even going to click to accept. I'm just going to hover over and look. Every single mixer excuse me, changes to that color. Now, I will tell you that this is also the behavior in Cubase and other DAWs that I've tested. But again, I consider it a limitation in Studio One because Studio One does not offer a workaround. Cubase, you'll see, has MIDI rack, which allows you to get past this. Instrument rack does not let you get around this. It behaves exactly in the same manner, but it drives me insane. So there is my coloring issue that the only way I could get around that is I could do separate VE hosts for every section that I wanted to be a different color. So you can imagine how many that could be, maybe just for my dimension, and then for lass and whatnot. Maybe I want them to be different shades or whatnot. So there's the coloring issue. Bus. Let's go to buses now. The way that I like to work is I like to put my instruments in a folder track, and then I like my folder track to be able to go to like a group track, as people would know it in Cubase. And then from a group track, you can go anywhere, straight to an audio or right out to the main output. Studio One doesn't offer a group track. So when I'm dealing with Studio One, I have to work with buses instead of a group track. So now, working with a folder track to keep it nice and tidy and neat like this causes one additional problem in Studio One that I don't have in Cubase. And here's what happens. In this folder track, I close it and I say, hey, I want to create a bus, because in Studio One you create buses for your folder tracks. It's one of the features. When I hit right now, before I forget, look here, everything's going to main out. Everything. This is where you would change your inputs and outputs, your outputs for like buses, effects, channels. Where do you want your output going for every one of your mixer tracks? Now watch. I'm going to create a bus. It's going to automatically name it Violins 1. But look at what it does. It assigns the entire project. Now, if you had 200 tracks, 500 tracks, 1,000 tracks, you can imagine how bad that would be for you, that you just changed hundreds of mixer channels to this right here. So I can come down here in Violins 2, I want to add another. Look, everybody becomes that. So as you can see, creating a bus at the folder track level is destructive. It's absolutely a useless feature if you're using an all-in-one VST host like I am with VE Pro. Alright, so there's my issue with busing. An additional issue with busing is, watch what happens. I have all of these string folders packed nice and neatly in another folder track, right? Watch what happens when I start playing games with these bus tracks. Oh, it already happened. So look, if you want to change your order, I just showed you randomly. I'm just making it happen. If you've seen, when I started moving these around, violas shot into the root. So they are no longer in here. Now what happens many times with me and drives my ass crazy is that the worst kind is when, say, viola 4 ends up in basses and I can't find him anywhere. And so I literally have to bring up track list and search the whole thing, expanding every folder to find it. And as you can see, for all you Cubase lovers who love the track visibility, they actually stole that from Studio One. They've had it for years. So that is a serious issue for me for buses. Another way, somebody might be watching and saying, hey, you can create a bus a different way. You can highlight these tracks, you can right click and say add bus for selected tracks. It adds it, it's right here. Problem is, everything behaves the same way. So I'm not going to sit here all day and move it around and waste your time watching me. You've seen already what happens. And it will happen at the most random time. When you least expect it, you think it's doing, and it'll be fine. Like 40 times you'll move track mixers, around mixer tracks, and it'll be fine. And the one time you're not paying attention, it will do exactly what I just showed you, and you will lose a track. And that's pretty much, and see here with this bus real quick just to show you, I'll rename this one. I'm just going to call it bus test just to show you that now I can still come up here, I get the same result. I'll change violins to bus test, and you can see my whole project became bus test. So that's not a good feature at all. For using a big VST host like VE Pro, this is not a good solution. If you're using individual tracks, I'm going to try and show you this very quickly. Instruments, I'm going to pull in 2 really quick individual VST hosts which will use instrument tracks of their own. This is not a VE Pro instance. This is just 2 tracks individual. Now you'll see, no matter what I do, these ones will never ruin the mixer track window. So we'll make them these 2 colors. I come to the end and here they are. Watch. I can change this and it follows. Change that one to green and it followed. I change this one to, let's go pink. And then you'll see that one didn't follow this way. Just the weirdest behavior. Change this and it will probably follow. But maybe if I change it here, it won't. And it did that time, but sometimes it doesn't. But dealing with buses, I never have to worry about it moving my track arrangement order. I can say add a bus for the selected track, and I can move this around and do whatever I want, and I don't have to worry about it screwing up the arrange window order. So you can see how sometimes moving them here arranges this, and moving them from here arranges this when you're dealing with multi-timbral. So let's see, moving on. And one last thing, transforming. Transforming instruments, I was trying to explain to people that when you're using a real-time, I'm sorry, many things at once. Let me get rid of this crap. Okay, when you want to, for instance, let's say I wanted to save CPU resources, I want to bounce these tracks right here, or what's called transform to audio in Studio One. It's an amazing feature. I've only got 15 seconds of this song looped so that it will only bounce 15 seconds. Watch what happens. I'm going to do one, and I'm going to say transform to audio. It comes up. I can either say render all channels. I can render the inserts, which inserts the effects into the audio. If you don't engage it, supposedly, they're kept for real-time processing and automation and yada yada. And that will actually work as long as you're not using an external hardware unit. External hardware units in your project do not give a crap about render insert checked or not. You're going to be forced to use it, and Cubase does the same thing. So that's not really a bug. It's just, it's the way it is. You can't bypass it. So let's just go ahead and say, okay, and by the way, this is a sweet feature, preserve instrument track. Basically what it does is, I'm going to hit OK and talk at the same time, is what it does is it preserves my MIDI track. So right now it solos that dimension violin 1. It's rendering it, transforming it to audio, but yet you're going to see as soon as it gets done, it's going to pause. Okay, so it's pausing right now, and it's thinking, because what it's doing is it's taking a save of your MIDI track. And you can see it underneath there. You can barely see it, but you can see my MIDI notes underneath that. But yet above it, there's my audio line. So now it's basically bounced it, it's taken it away and layered the audio right over top of it. I can undo it by transforming to an instrument track, and boom, it's instantly a MIDI track again. Now, the thing to notice though was that it was in real time. I have no way to work around that using a hardware unit. So my explanation on the site was I was trying to tell everybody that it takes forever if you want to bounce your whole section. Or say I wanted to bounce the entire string section to save resources. When I hit transform to audio track and I hit OK, watch what happens. Now keep in mind it's only 15 seconds, but that's because I only set us to be able to bounce 15 seconds. If this were 4 or 5 minutes long, it's real time. It would play for 5 minutes, pause, think for about a minute while it processes the audio, saves your track, then clicks down to the next one. Now I'm on 2, real time again for another 4 or 5 minutes. Then let it pause, process, save your MIDI. If you're using VE Pro, by the way, it will save your VE Pro instance at the same time. So it causes a big lag. So there you've seen why it would take forever if it was a 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute song and I needed to bounce 30 tracks. You multiply 5 minutes by 30 tracks. You do that yourself and you'll see why you'll be there forever. So that is the issues I have with S1. I'm going to hit pause and launch you over to Cubase, and I'm going to show you how I work around that in Cubase. Alright, I'm back, and now I'm in Cubase, so let's get started. I'm going to bring up F11 real quick and show you the track instrument, rack instrument. As you can see, I am using a rack. Remember, this is the key. You cannot use track. If you use track, you will get the exact same behavior that you've seen over in Studio One. So I use rack instruments, which uses MIDI tracks instead of instrument tracks. So let's get rid of that window. Now let's bring up F3 and bring up the mixer. Now let's take a look and see, real quick, violins 1 from 8DO, violins 2. So they would take these 2 tracks right here. You can see that they're blue. We'll flip back over, expand my strings. You can see I've got the same kind of a layout as I did over there. Some folder tracks, keeping them nice and neat. Expand here. Here's the 2 tracks we're talking about. Now watch. I'm going to go ahead and change the color of these to something very obvious. And now, if we go over, hit F3 again, you can see that these changed. But what you can notice is that it did not affect anything else. Everything else stayed perfect. So the mixer and the arrange window, color-wise, stayed perfect. Let's change it again. Go to pink and yellow. Very obvious. Hit F3 again, and there they are. Yellow and pink. So that brass was already yellow. Down here. So there's the color. You can see by coming over here and working with a VST rack instrument, you can get around the coloring annoyance of Studio One, and that was enormous for me. Also, now let's talk about flow really fast on how I work around the great big bus and transform to audio issues that I have in Studio One. So now I have all of these strings here. They're all inside of a folder track. So all of them go to a folder track. The folder track then outputs to a group track. This is exactly what Studio One needs to fix that issue. They need something just like this, an in-between mediator that's more powerful than the way they've got it now. Which then I have a strings audio that is listening to the output of the group track. So his input is the output of the group track. So let's bring that up and take a look at how that works. So we scroll all the way down here, and we have strings, and I do, some people might find it confusing, but me, personally, I name them all the same. Let me flip back over. You'll see that I called the folder track strings, the group track strings, and the audio mix down section. I call them all the same because you can't really cross them. When you're in a folder track, you can, when you're going out, it's easy to find a group track, and then you're obviously strings to group track strings. Then when you go to the group track, you're looking at its output, and you're picking, you know, for me, I pick main output, and then I have this string kind of steal. I look at it as in spying on this guy, so he's hearing exactly what that guy's hearing. So it loops through. Here is the strings routing to the main output. Then you have, as a matter of fact, let's clean this up. Get rid of VST instruments. Get rid of these. Keep our group track. And I need you back. Okay. So now, VST, strings, 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 and stereo out. So you basically can see that this follows a, I feel like one of them is missing. There it is. Got it. Strings, strings, strings. There they are. So you basically have your VST instrument and called strings. Then you have a folder track called strings, and then you have this group track right here routing with your section mixdown. So I'm literally just routing strings to strings to strings to string in a loop, so that, let me hide this window, so that basically when these guys play right here, I hit play and solo these guys. When these guys are playing, you can hear them playing, maybe very lightly. Now, you can see in the group track, the only one that's playing right now, it does engage them all, but I've only got this one section playing because these are muted, and I like that. It works, and it doesn't work that well over in Studio One, but it does here. I get just this one. I do get my Bricasti tail, and then if you come down here to section mixdowns, I'm going to delete this for the moment, and then I'm going to unmute it, and I'm going to enable it. You'll hear it gets louder. It's quieter. it doubles in volume because it's actually listening to that input now. So keeping that in mind, when I'm ready to bounce, say my violins 1 and they're all done and ready, I simply do what you're looking at here. I have them soloed. I don't even have to have these up, by the way. I can turn those off like that. I can minimize that. And then with the sections, I record enable and I turn on monitoring. As soon as I hit record, you're going to see that my strings here is going to record what's happening here. So I'm basically doing something like, I forget how many were up there, but maybe 10, could be more. But like in my other example, I had 34 string tracks. I can do all 34 tracks recording simultaneously to this. And you can see the output. Here's the folder track, every MIDI track on the inside, playing. It's going to come in here in a minute and start doing, I did a lot of DVC. This is just a fun little DVC exercise that I did for myself. And you can see all the little mixers going. So here comes Last and Symphonia. That outputs to this group track. So you can see the input right here. Then this output is coming down to here. So you can see the perfect flow. And then there's my reverb from the broadcasting. Now let's go ahead and stop it. I'm going to back it up. I'm going to turn everything off now. Turn off monitoring. And we're just going to solo this strings track. And you're going to see now my computer is going to be at about 0.1% CPU. And there is the exact sound. Perfect. There's no alterations. There's none of the complaining I always hear. It sounds different when it does not sound different when you do it this way, because exactly what you hear is exactly what you're recording. So that is how I get around the transform and the issues that I have over in S1, and how I deal with my buses. And as you can see, I don't have the track color issues that I had over in S1. So I hope that helps you guys out, and if you guys got any ideas or whatnot, would love to hear them. See you later.